The Desert Pact. One bullet, one truth. The desert had a way of keeping secrets. It swallowed footprints by noon, erased blood by sunset, and buried lies beneath dunes that shifted like restless ghosts. Men had crossed it seeking gold, revenge, salvation, or escape. Most found only silence, and in the summer of 1887, silence was exactly what Jonah Creed wanted. He rode alone beneath a white-hot sky, his old bay horse dragging shadows across the endless sand. The brim of his hat was torn, his coat faded gray with dust, and a scar cut from the corner of his eye to the edge of his jaw like a knife had once tried to split his face open. Jonah carried one rifle, one revolver, one canteen nearly empty. And one bullet wrapped in cloth. Not in the chamber, not in the cylinder, wrapped carefully and hidden inside his breast pocket, close to his heart. That bullet had a name. 3 days earlier, the town of Dry Mesa had burned orange beneath dawn. People gathered in the street outside the sheriff's office, whispering in nervous clumps. Ranch hands, widows, drifters, gamblers, every soul knew something terrible had happened. Sheriff Amos Vale hung dead from the balcony. No rope marks on his neck. No blood. Just a single bullet hole through the center of his chest. The badge still pinned to his shirt. And carved into the wooden post beside him were 6 words. One bullet. One truth. No one understood except Jonah Creed. Because 20 years ago, those words had been spoken by 4 young men who thought themselves kings of the frontier. Jonah, Amos Vale, Silas Crow, Elias Mercer, and Daniel Holt, 5 friends bound by greed, blood, and a promise never meant to survive. Back then they were reckless riders hired to guard silver shipments through Apache Pass. One moonless night, they discovered a hidden stagecoach overturned in a ravine. Inside it were iron lockboxes packed with minted coins and government bonds worth more money than any of them had ever seen. Enough to buy ranches, enough to buy judges, enough to buy new names. But there was one problem. A federal marshal still breathed beside the wreckage, his hand clutched around a revolver. He recognized Amos Vale, said he'd testify, said every one of them would hang. Silas wanted to shoot him at once. Elias wanted to run. Daniel begged mercy. Jonah said they should leave the man. But Amos laughed, spun the cylinder of his pistol, placed one round inside, and held it up like a preacher lifting scripture. One bullet, he said, smiling in moonlight. One truth. Whoever fires decides our future. They passed the gun hand to hand. Cowards all. No one wanted the sin. At last Daniel Holt, youngest among them, trembling and pale, pulled the trigger. Click. Empty chamber. Amos snatched the gun back, turned it to the marshal's chest, and fired. The only bullet tore through flesh. Then Amos said, "Now we all own the truth." They buried the marshal and split the fortune. By winter, the 5 friends vanished into separate lives. But guilt has patience. Jonah reached Black Vulture Canyon at dusk. The canyon walls rose jagged like broken teeth. Wind moaned through narrow stone corridors. He dismounted near a dead mesquite tree and found fresh tracks. Another rider had come recently. He touched the cloth-wrapped bullet in his pocket. 3 left, he muttered. A rifle cocked behind him. Drop the gun, Jonah. He knew the voice. Silas Crow. Jonah slowly raised his hands and turned. Silas stood broader now, beard streaked white, eyes mean as ever. A double-barrel shotgun rested in his grip. "Well," Silas said, "ghosts do ride. You killed Amos." Silas spat. "I wanted to. But no." "Then who?" Silas stepped closer. "Mercer's dead too." Jonah's face hardened. "When?" 2 nights ago. Found in his hotel room in Tucson. 1 hole in the chest. Same words on the wall. Wind hissed between stones. 3 dead. Amos. Elias. Whoever hunted them knew everything. "Daniel," Jonah said. Silas sneered. "Daniel Holt died 15 years back of fever. No body. No proof." "Exactly." Silas lowered the shotgun slightly. "I didn't come to kill you. I came because this canyon is where we buried the rest." Jonah stared. "The rest?" Silas smiled crookedly. "You thought we split all that fortune." Amos lied. "Half remained hidden here. He swore none of us could touch it unless all 5 stood together again." Jonah laughed bitterly. "Well, that's difficult now." A shot cracked from the ridge above. Silas jerked backward, blood exploding from his shoulder. The shotgun fell. Another shot chipped rock near Jonah's head. Down, Jonah shouted. They dove behind a boulder. Silas groaned, clutching his wound. A voice drifted from above. You boys always did love hiding behind stone. Jonah froze. He knew that voice. Daniel Holt. Night settled across the canyon while moonlight silvered the cliffs. Daniel stood on the ridge line in a long dark coat, rifle in hand. Older now, lean and hollow-cheeked, but unmistakable. You died, Silas yelled. Daniel answered calmly. That was useful. How? Jonah called. The doctor who signed my death certificate owed me money. Silas cursed. Daniel descended the slope slowly, confident as a man who had rehearsed revenge for years. When Amos killed that marshal, Daniel said, I heard him laughing while I vomited in the sand. You all walked away rich. I walked away haunted. You took your share, Silas growled. Daniel's eyes flashed, and spent every coin trying to drown memory. He pointed the rifle at them. I watched each of you prosper. Sheriff, banker, cattle king, wanderer, while the marshal's widow raised children alone. Jonah spoke quietly. You could have turned us in. No, I wanted truth. Daniel tossed something onto the ground before them. A tarnished deputy badge. The marshal's son gave me this. He asked who murdered his father. Silence. Jonah felt the weight of years crush his ribs. What did you tell him? He asked. Daniel smiled sadly. I said I'd bring him names. Silas suddenly lunged for the fallen shotgun. Daniel fired. The bullet struck Silas through the throat. He collapsed choking in the dust. Jonah reached for his revolver. Daniel fired again. The gun spun from Jonah's hand. Now only 2 men remained beneath moonlight. Daniel and Jonah. Why save me for last? Jonah asked. Because you were the only one who said no. Jonah swallowed. That doesn't make me innocent. No, Daniel said, but it makes you honest enough to hear the truth. He lowered the rifle slightly. I never came for vengeance alone. I came for the hidden fortune. Amos returned here years ago and moved it. Before he died, he mailed me a map. Daniel drew folded paper from his pocket. We dig it up. Then I decide whether you live. Jonah almost smiled, still letting chance judge men. Daniel's face tightened. No, this time I judge. They dug till midnight under the dead mesquite tree. Sweat ran black with dirt. Coyotes cried in the distance. At 3 feet deep, Jonah's shovel struck iron. Together they hauled out a mud-caked lockbox. Daniel opened it. Inside were stacks of bonds, gold eagles, silver bars, and a second smaller box. Daniel frowned and lifted it. Inside lay 1 revolver cartridge wrapped in cloth, and a note in Amos Vale's handwriting. For the last survivor, truth always costs 1 bullet. Daniel laughed once. A broken sound. Even dead, he mocks us. Jonah looked at the cartridge. Same cloth wrapping, same style as the bullet in his pocket. He slowly removed his own hidden round. Daniel noticed. You kept it. Jonah nodded. The original bullet casing Amos fired. Dug it from the marshal's grave 10 years later. Daniel stared. You visited the grave. Every year. Why? Jonah's voice cracked for the first time in decades. Because I heard the widow crying there once. Moonlight touched Daniel's face, and rage faltered. You could have confessed. I should have. Why didn't you? Cowardice, Jonah said. Then time. Then shame so old it became part of my bones. Daniel pointed the rifle again, hands trembling. I waited 20 years for this moment. I know. Say something worth hearing. Jonah looked directly into the barrel. We all killed him. But Amos pulled the trigger. You want one truth. Here it is. Revenge doesn't bury guilt. It feeds it. Daniel's finger tightened, then loosened. Tears shone in his eyes. I don't know who I am without this hatred. Jonah answered softly. Then don't be it anymore. A sudden click echoed behind them. Both men turned. Silas Crow stood swaying in blood-soaked dirt, throat ruined but alive, clutching the shotgun with one hand. He fired both barrels. The blast thundered through the canyon. Daniel was thrown backward. Jonah hit the ground as pellets tore past. Silas stumbled, empty weapon dropping from numb fingers. Jonah grabbed his revolver and fired once. Silas fell dead at last. Smoke drifted in moonlight. Jonah crawled to Daniel. The younger man gasped, chest shredded but not instantly gone. Blood bubbled on his lips. Seems, Daniel whispered, truth did cost 1 bullet. Hold on, Jonah said. No doctor in 50 miles. Daniel looked toward the stars. Did I become like him? Jonah gripped his hand. No, you stopped before the end. Daniel exhaled shakily. Then tell the marshal's son, all 5 names. I will. And give him the gold. Jonah nodded. Daniel Holt died with moonlight on his face. Morning came cold and pale. Jonah buried Daniel beside the mesquite tree, far from the men who deserved no markers. He wrote 5 names on a plank cross. Then loaded the fortune onto Silas's mule. The ride to Dry Mesa took 2 days. When Jonah entered town, people watched from porches as if death itself had come calling. He walked into the sheriff's office and placed a lockbox on the desk. The new deputy, young and nervous, asked, "What is this?" "Evidence," Jonah said. Then he handed over a written confession naming every man involved in the marshal's murder 20 years earlier. Signed, Jonah Creed. "Where are the others?" the deputy asked. "Judged already." News spread fast across the territory. Some called Jonah brave, most called him damned. The marshal's son, now a grown blacksmith in New Mexico, received the gold and confession. He never replied. Jonah did not expect thanks. He was sentenced not to hang. Too much time, too many dead, but to life labor repairing roads through the same desert that had hidden his sin. Every morning he broke stone under the sun. Every evening he watched the horizon bleed red. And each night, he slept a little easier. Because truth, once spoken, no longer needed burying. Years later, travelers crossing the old road told stories of an aging prisoner who worked harder than younger men and spoke little. They said he kept a single empty bullet casing on a cord around his neck. When asked why, he would answer, "To remember that one bullet can kill a man." Then after a pause, "But one truth can save what's left of him." So the desert kept many secrets still. But not that one.